I was born in Calgary, Alberta in 1969 and 1969.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, in Calgary, Alberta, and raised there until I was 9. And then we moved out of Calgary to the Vancouver area, actually Surrey, good old Surrey boy. And raised here until I was an adult and got married and had a kid here, and then yeah, kind of moved on and around from there.
Did you fish before you moved to? It's so hard for me to maintain my professionalism because I'm also from Surrey, and every part of me wants to be like, Surrey, what?
Surrey girl.
But if you know, you
Yeah, no,
know. Although I was one of the good Surrey girls. I was not one of those, but
yeah, I wasn't one of the good Surrey guys. I was not the nicest teenager, but that's whatever. I grew up.
Okay, look, for people who don't know who have no idea what we're talking about, can we just explain Surrey, especially back in the, I guess technically for you, the 70s and for me, the 80s?
Rough. Well, actually, no, me was the 80s. I didn't move to Surrey until 79, right?
Okay.
And then I grew up the 80 through mid 90s. It was tough. It was a tough neighborhood. Wally area especially was tough. At the end of my late teens, early 20s, Newton started getting bad, but Surrey, Wally, just lots of drugs and lots of guys beating each other up and just parties, and it was a fun place to grow up. It just might not have been the best place to grow up, but I mean, a lot of us made it. You made it. I made it out of there. So
But
yeah,
I think I actually attribute Surrey to my fishing because I tell people that I grew up in a rough neighborhood and they all, a lot of people are like, oh yeah, especially nowadays, what's your consideration of rough? And it was rough. And because of seeing that and the constant endless fighting and friends of mine being murdered, I mean, it started to get really bad, especially earlier, later on as the gang wars started and it just got really nasty. And I started fishing to escape it all.
and
So
that's
what about you?
well. I actually learned how to fly fish, actually when I was 6 years old on the sorry, no, on the Highwood River in Alberta. My dad taught me. My dad moved here in the mid 60s from Germany, and the reason he moved to Canada was to get away from the lack of outdoors in Germany, right? Because
Oh,
out in Germany, it was if you wanted to go hunting, you had to be a part of a club, and your gun had to be stored there. If you wanted to be a fisherman, you had to pay, and that just similar to what it's like in England right now. With having there's really not a lot of public land, and the public land that is there is overrun. So my dad wanted to get away, and that's why we moved to Alberta. I mean, as you had so many blue ribbon rivers and stuff back at that time, right, for trout. That yeah, that's where they wanted to move. So that's I learned on the Highwood and on the bow, and a little bit on the Old Man. And then when we moved to Vancouver, the main reason my dad moved us to Vancouver is because on in the summertime we went to Vancouver Island to Miracle Beach all the time, and my dad just fell absolutely head over heels in love with salmon fishing. So moved out here, and that's what I started doing. Is a lot of ocean fishing, mostly on gear at first, but then I started going after them on the fly, and then doing sea run cutthroat on the fly, and flounder on the fly, and everything I could possibly think of on the fly. Right, so that's how
right.
it all came about.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
my
love
dad
him.
was.
I've been gone too long. I just heard the about. I heard the about the Canadian about, and it was just like a yes. Keep talking. Don't stop talking. It's music to my ears. But wait, all saltwater stuff. Did you guys end up, heading into some of the river or freshwater fisheries?
I did, yeah. My dad, not so much. My dad was very hooked on the saltwater thing. He actually bought a piece of land on Main Island, one of the Gulf Islands, and built himself his dream cabin and had his double eagle over there that he fished with and all that. But then he got in. I can't remember. It was Father's Day. I don't know. I can't remember what year, but probably early mid 2000s. We bought him a sturgeon guided sturgeon trip. So about a week after that trip, he went and bought himself a $70,000 jet boat.
Oh no.
But I actually got back into the whole still water and freshwater rivers for trout and bullies and stuff like that because of a buddy of mine, Daryl Sitch. His dad was hardcore, and his dad kind of took me under his wing and taught me. Still, I had no idea about still waters at all until my mid-teens, like at all, none. Right? And my dad didn't do still waters; he did rivers and ocean, right? So yeah, my buddy Daryl, his dad Keith took me under his wing, and that I just exploded into the Stillwater world. I just loved it, right? So
Why? What about it at that particular stage in your life was so appealing?
um, especially at that time, I was I won't say disturbed, but my I lost my eye to a firecracker when I was 15, and I went a little loopy. Yeah, I've got a glass eye, so
Oh,
um,
I didn't know that. It
yeah,
looks great.
yeah. So, but I went a little loopy. I was mad at the world, everybody. I hated everybody. I hated everything. You know, I just typical teenager when you have a traumatic incident, right? So, um, that and on top of being a bit of a well, I would have been diagnosed with ADHD back in the 80s, but there was no such thing, right? So, right. So it really his dad and just being out in the still waters, the calmness of it, the loons in the background, the beautiful early morning fog, all that, it grounded me and calmed me down. And I needed that badly at that time. So
Okay, tell me about where the story goes from there. You're in your teens, so you're still in high school when all this is happening. In Surrey, I might add.
yep, yep. Yeah. So then I mean, I got married to my at that time my high school sweetheart. We're now
Oh.
divorced for quite a long time now, but and had a child, my son Ryan. And from that point on, I mean, I just did my thing. I went fishing on the weekends here and there with my buddies, and I'm a ticketed millwright and welder, so I was working at the sawmills and pulp
Oh.
mills and that kind of stuff. So I was pretty. I mean, typical of a young man with a young family and stuff, you kind of start drifting away from that stuff because you have to concentrate on making sure your family's okay. And then, yeah, when we divorced, it was just giving her, everything, just give her. Right? I was fishing every day. I was fishing ocean. I was fishing rivers. I was fishing every day, every day. Just even if I was working at the mill, I'd get off at 4 o'clock and right to a river. Right, I was always fishing. So did a lot of traveling as a millwright. Um, but again, at that point when I was starting to travel and my wife was at home with my son, what else was there to do? I'm in the middle of upstate, in the middle of northern Quebec, up near James Bay, and it's like, what do I do in the evening? Well,
Fishing.
I'm gonna go fishing, right? So
Yeah.
so I got the pleasure of being able to fish all around North America when I was young. And then, like I said, once we divorced, it was every day. It was either fishing or golfing, fishing or golfing, fishing or golfing, and then fishing usually won out.
About right.
And That's when I really started getting to do the interior fly fishing stuff because I was living in Vernon, right? So I mean, it was that whole area from Vernon to Kamloops to Merritt, up to Williams Lake and all that. That whole area is, as you know, Stillwater heaven, right? I mean, it's one and one A with New Zealand. You know, which one's better for still waters in the world, right? So yeah,
I'd argue BC. I think British Columbia has got the best. I mean, Tasmania's probably quite a close just because you can stock them. But as far as proper stillwater fishing with quality fish, I would almost always bet on BC. But what was the scene like back in the day? Was it a Brian Chan mecca? What was it like? Was it before him?
almost the start of the Brian. I actually, when I was doing that a lot, to be honest, I didn't know much about Brian Chan and Phil Rowley and all these guys because the internet wasn't as big, Facebook wasn't as big, the whole social media thing that didn't like. I mean, I met him and I knew of him, but I actually the two books I wrote, one of them is dedicated to him and Phil because I learned so much from them, right? And like most BC stillwater fishermen did, right? We've learned so much from those two and others. I'm just naming a few, but
Yeah.
um, yeah, yeah, I would say in that time, yeah, I didn't know anything about them. Once I started getting into the industry more and wrote my first book and then pro team with Peter Morrison, which you probably remember Peter. So I was pro team with him and just started getting into all that the industry itself. I mean, if you didn't know who Brian was, you weren't in the industry. right? So,
I
so
remember
yeah,
when you wrote your first book, by the way. What year was that?
that was '06.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
remember all
'06
that.
was,
I've got
yeah.
questions for you. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I've got questions around that. Sorry, you're like, do
What's the
ask.
question? Oh yeah, you want to know how that came about? So
Well, yeah, I remember it all happening, but you had been obviously fishing before the book. Back then, especially, it's still like this if you write a book, but back then, especially, it was a really big deal if you wrote a book.
back then, yeah. Now, I mean, it's still a big deal. It's just easier access nowadays, right? You can self-publish a lot easier, and you can get onto websites easier and stuff. Back then, you had to either find a publisher or put your own money out. And I put my own money out. I put $60,000 out to write my first book, right?
Right. I just
So
remember thinking that you were really ballsy. So tell me about it. What gave you the idea that you were going to do something different? Remember, there were so many books out there. There was the Gilly was out there. And it was at the time too, early 2000s, people were dickheads. Excuse my language.
you're right.
But there and then with social starting, it was just a really interesting time to be vulnerable. And I remember looking at you in a little bit of awe, thinking, he is doing this. What is going through his mind? So now, all these years later, almost 20 years later, I get to ask you, what was going through your mind?
Honestly, what was going through my mind is I was a millwright. I owned my own business by that point. I owned my own business. I took it over from my dad's business. I took over his business. And one day I was getting home from work and I jumped off the back of my truck like I had done 500 times. And I tore my ACL, my MCL, tore my meniscus, the whole bit. And I was actually off work for almost a year because I had to have a complete rebuild of my knee and the whole bit. So I lost the company because the company was me. If I didn't fix the machine, we were so specialized because I did mechanical, electrical, hydraulics, pneumatics. I did all of it across the board. So trying to find somebody to take my place was impossible. So I lost the business. And while I was off on rehab, I was writing a blog. I just started writing a blog on like a lot of us started doing, right? So, and then about 6 months in, my current wife, Renee, she said, you're writing a blog like every day. Why don't you put this stuff together and put a book together? I'm like, let's do it. So that's how it came about, the first book. So
Tell me what if people want to buy this book, where can they buy it? What's it called? This is where we insert shameless plug.
it's called The Freshman Fly Fisher, A Beginner's Guide for a New Generation. It's the first book. And then the second book is The Freshman Fly Fisher's Insect Guide. And the second one's actually a Canadian bestseller. The first one is very basic. And the reason I came up with what the premise, you actually mentioned the book that I didn't really base it on, but kind of I loved the gilly. I mean, any stillwater fly fisherman in BC, you needed the gilly. And I found the gilly slightly too advanced for a person that's never touched a fly rod. Great book, but beginner to intermediate, not beginner. So that's why I wrote the book I wrote, because I go through rods and reels and what is a 5 weight compared to a 6 weight, and what is a floating line compared to a sinking line and a sink tip, and what's tippet and tapered leader, stuff that wasn't covered in the gilly. I just wanted people that I wanted to get people involved in a sport that I loved, right? And I love teaching. So that's how that all came about, right? I wanted to make sure that it was something simple enough that you know everybody could read, made it simple, and yeah, that's about all I can say about it. I just was really passionate about teaching, and I actually was teaching. I was teaching fly fishing, fly tying, fly casting, and I taught outdoor survival as well for a while.
Really?
So that's it was all part of it, right? Because I love teaching, and I did a lot of stuff in Surrey with youth at risk, and I took them out to Abbotsford, out to the hatchery and stuff, and did some lessons there, and got them to go fishing in the pond, and it really helped these kids, the kids that I was those kids. I was those troubled kids. I was the one that got kicked out of 3 schools for fighting. I was so I really felt an obligation to go back and help these guys out. And 2 or 3 of them actually really turned into hardcore fly fishermen. So, which made me proud, right? So that's how that all came about. Yeah,
Did
and
you
that's actually
realize
about the time I met you.
yeah, that's
At
right.
Yeah, I think the first time I met you would have been, I'm just guessing, 2007-ish, give or take, at the BC Outdoor Show, somewhere around there. So yeah,
Yep,
yeah, you would
that's
have
right.
been working Peter's booth sometimes too, and you were working. Who else did you? I can't remember whose booth you were working, but you
Rio
were always around
Loomis, yeah, back. Yep.
back in the day.
In your title, you had a new generation. Did you realize that that there was actually a huge generational shift? Because that was about the time when everything changed. And again, albeit it's part of the internet, social, the old guard starting to fade away. It was really the beginning of a new generation. Did you realize that at the time?
No, actually, the name in the title was more for the Gilly and others were there. This is for the new generation coming up that doesn't already know. That's how I was thinking when I named it. It
Yeah.
went through like 12 different name iterations when I was writing it, right? So, and that's the one we settled on. And I'm glad I did, because you're right. Even though I didn't know it at the time, you're right. That's about the time when well, not so much Instagram, but Facebook and others
Facebook.
started becoming big. And you're right. It was the start of a new generation, which I don't know about you, but good and bad. There's great things about social media, but there's really crappy things about social media, because there's too many people doing the keyboard warrior and keyboard bullying, and it just, so yeah. I don't know which one I like better, the now or the before. So
Right. Or just even being able to open a map and have to figure it out. It was so exciting then, remember?
I love those BC backroads map books. I
Uh-huh.
still got 5 or 6 of them here somewhere. Right. So yeah.
It was a good time. So then how was it received? How was it received in the industry and just in your general circle?
Um, Pretty good. The first book, pretty good. Like I said, it was so basic that a lot of the people that I was hanging around with on Fly BC, one of the websites I really was hardcore into at the time, and Fishing with Rod and a few others. Um, I mean, most of these guys already knew what they were doing, but I had huge support from all of them, from the lowliest guy on the websites to the guys that own the sites, like John Alexander and Ed Ashton Hoof, and guys like that. I mean, they really helped me along and allowed me to advertise on the sites and so on. So it was actually quite well received for what it was. Not as well received as the second book. The second book exploded. People just went nuts for it. So yeah.
Because I'm sequentially minded, I am going to come back to the second book because I want to work through your timeline. Can you explain to people listening why BC has got such impressive stillwater fishing? Because I think when I explain to people that we've got amazing lakes, they just assume that there are lots of lakes and that there are lots of fish in them, and they don't realize just to what extent the quality of fish are. Can you explain
Well, the
that?
quality of fishing, I mean, as you know, I mean, and to listeners, it's phenomenal. It's we are extremely lucky in this province to be able to have what we have. A lot of it's to do with the lakes are just so full of life. If it wasn't for the algae and the weeds and the substrate, we wouldn't have the insect hatches that we have. And if we wouldn't have the insect hatches that we do have, we wouldn't have the fish populations. Um, the the government's done an okay job. Never a great job. They never do, but that's opinionated, right?
Sounds like government.
But
Yeah.
I mean, I worked for the government of Alberta for 10 years, so I mean, I can say that stuff about government, but whatever. They did an okay job with keeping our stocking programs going and stuff. It's just I think the awareness to fly fishermen being so aware, and guys like Brian being advocates for stocking programs and catch and release and doing things properly and stuff really grew the industry. And then I mean our fishing here is just it's phenomenal. And then on top of that, I mean, where it is, wintertime, it's frozen. So what do the fish do? They gorge during that open water, right? So it's another one of those excellent things, right? But the big thing for me, being a bug guy, because that's the big thing. I'm hardcore. If you can't see me, but I'm tattooed full of bugs
You are.
everywhere. So if it wasn't for the insects, we wouldn't have the fishery we have. Plain and simple. And because of that, I mean, there's other reasons. They're not the bottom of the totem pole, the insects. There's stuff below it, right? And because of the whole zooplankton and just everything else that we have going on in our waters and how healthy they are, that's why our fishery is so phenomenal here.
And
So
fish up to 15 pounds. I mean, some of the biggest
absolutely.
fish I've seen are in northern, or not northern, sorry, in interior BC.
Yeah, central BC. Actually, I'm not going to mention the name of the lake, but there's a lake in Alberta that I go to that has browns, tigers, and rainbows to 12 pounds, all in the
Does
same
all
lake.
does Alberta have the same? Now, this is a little bit of a controversial question, I assume. Does Alberta have the same, in general, size fish as BC? And if not, is this because of Brian Chan's triploid program?
That's part of it. The triploid programs in BC, in Alberta as well. We get
Oh, it
actually in
is. Okay.
Alberta, we've got a lot of fish that Kamloops strain, Passek strain, right? So they just don't have the lakes aren't as healthy. They don't have as much insect life and as much algae and as much weed life and stuff. So they're and you got to remember also it's 9 months frozen or 8 months frozen too, right? So they got a really short period. I only know of a few lakes that have big fish like that. Most of the lakes, 15, 16, 18-inch fish are pretty normal. And even the abundance of fish, it's just not it. You can't compare them to BC. It's night and day. Just this one, actually, a couple of lakes I know are just that special. And actually, that lake that I'm talking about is probably my favorite lake. Period. 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 It's actually the one in the background picture. So
Excellent, which shall remain nameless.
the
Um,
nameless lake. Yeah.
your career, where does it go from there?
From there, I started becoming pro team with quite a few companies. Peter Morrison was one, and he was with Sage and Rio and Reddington and Dr. Slick and Bradley Smokers and all that. So I was pro team with him, and um, because of my knee and other physical aspects, and, and I mean, as you know, if you're not top of your game in this industry, you don't make a lot of money. It's not something you can do full time unless you're one of the top. And so I actually went back to work and I started working at Wholesale Sports as the fishing department manager in Langley. I opened that store.
I remember
And
that. That's cool.
yeah, so I did that for a few years until I decided to go to Vancouver Island. My wife and we decided to move to Vancouver Island so I could go back to university. And I went and took the fisheries and aquaculture program when I was in my early 40s.
Good for
So yeah,
you. What was the end goal?
to learn more about fish.
Truly,
Honestly,
right? Yeah.
I did not want to work in the industry. I just wanted to learn more about the biology of a fish so I could become a better fisherman. That was the whole reason to do it. To be honest, that was. So,
Did
and
you
then
do the entire program? How long did it
no,
take?
I actually quit after the first year because that's the first year was all the biology and all that. Second year was getting into the aquaculture, and because of my stance on aquaculture, I at the time still do to a point disagreed with salmon farms and all that stuff. I didn't want to any part of that, so I actually quit the program. But it didn't matter. I just like I said, I was there to learn more about the biology and the makeup of fish and how they behave and the relationship between them and insects and all that stuff, right? That's why I went.
Was it worth it?
And
Did you learn a
oh,
ton?
absolutely. Yeah, actually, to be honest, I quit school in grade 10. I hated school. So I had to go back. And when I went to university, I had to go back and take English 11, science 11, math 11, English, math, science 12. So, and then go back to university and take English and math 101 before I could even get into the aquaculture program. But I absolutely loved it because I was a senior student. So, and the kids, they all were, when the teacher would ask a question that needed life experience, all the kids kind of went
Yeah,
and
right.
looked. Let's listen to. There was two of us, me and Kurt, and the two of us. We were able to tell stories. I wanted to be there. Most of the kids were there because their parents wanted them there, right?
Yeah,
So
that's
it
true.
was an awesome experience. I tell you, anybody that's thinking about going to school as an adult, do it. Do it. It was the best experience of my life.
What high school did you go to?
I went to Frank Hurt.
Oh, you went to Frank Hurt?
Yeah, went to Frankfurt, and then I got kicked out of there and went to Johnson Heights, and I got kicked out of there and I went to Guilford Park. So
I was
yeah,
Fleetwood.
Playwood. Yeah, yeah.
And then they opened a new school and we went to Enver Creek. That is hilarious. I got suspended every year too, by the way. Not
you
expelled
were
because I had the lead in all the musicals, so they couldn't expel me, but I got suspended every year also for fighting.
you were at Enver Creek.
Yeah.
I could throw a rock at Enver Creek from my house that I grew up in.
No way. Where were
That
you?
bu- the bush that Enver Creek got built, and they tore down the bush that I played in when I was a kid and built forts in and all that.
I remember that. Now, do you remember there's that little creek? If you were to go through the bush, there was a creek
That
down there,
that creek, I dammed that thing all so many times and caught salmon in there all the time.
right? Oh, this is
All,
so cool.
that
This
yeah,
this is hilarious.
I live on 144th and 85th is where I live. So
I lived
and
on
Enver is
150.
just in behind.
I was 151st.
Or you were just north of me, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Too good.
Yeah.
Too good. Okay. So you go back to school, you come out of school, and then what happens?
Um, then I would, actually, while I was at school, I was working part time at Home Depot, just because I had to work. And then Cabela's opened a store up in Nanaimo. So I applied for that and I became the fishing department manager there. I, I was the guy that set up the whole fishing department and hired all the people that we needed, especially the fly fishing department. I made sure I had people that knew what they were talking about. And then I started applying for jobs because I just wanted to get back into the industry I knew. I wanted to make money. I mean, working at Cabela's, you're 17, 18, 20 bucks an hour. I was used to making over 40. So it's kind of hard to. So I started applying for jobs again. I had an interview at a sawmill in Williams Lake, a sawmill in Prince George, a pellet mill in Burns Lake. And then I got this job offer from the government of Alberta. I'm like, let's go to Alberta. So that's where that went. And I was there
To do
from
to do what though?
14 till now.
What was your job with them?
I was what I did, and this is really cool. I knew nothing about the industry at all, but I got to travel throughout the whole province. I was responsible for inspections and maintenance of the dams throughout the province. So I was in the group. I wasn't responsible for Old Man Dam and St. Mary's, those big ones down south. But Dixon Dam in the middle, I had a bunch of. I had one in Vermilion. I had another one in Costa Camrose, south of Edmonton. I had one up in St. Paul. I had 3 pump houses that supplied water out of the North Saskatchewan River to St. Paul for drinking, and another one that took water out of the Red Deer into a couple of lakes that rose the water level for fish stocks and for recreation. So, and I got to take my fishing rod everywhere I went. So I was like, great.
But aren't
So,
dams mostly opposed by fly fishers? Are there situations, I'm assuming, of course, where a dam does make sense without impacting any sort of fishery or the environment?
you know what? There's a huge argument either way. I mean, we all know that. I wouldn't want to be involved in the environmental process of the Site C Dam in northern BC. I can tell you that on the piece. But yes, it does impact. There's no ands, ifs, or buts. It does impact, but they have to weigh between fly fishermen or fishermen on the Old Man and agriculture. And agriculture is 1,000 times the money bringer than fly fishing or fishing will ever be. So I mean, the government had to make a hard choice. They've done a pretty good job. There's a few on the bow. They've actually, in my opinion, they've screwed up the bow because the bow was a blue ribbon river. It's no longer. It lost its blue ribbon certification about 10 years ago,
Ooh,
right?
didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah, it did because of pollution and stuff, right? Blue ribbon. There's certain things that have to happen, and pollution's one of them. Water clarity, and they they ended up losing that because just all kinds of stuff that has happened and gone on. So they made some mistakes with the bow. They made some mistakes with a few of the dams downstream, like the Carsland Dam and things. They have side channels that the fish get caught in, and then they can't get out of them. So they have fish capture programs, but they're getting one out of every 40 fish, and it's just so there's problems. Obviously, there is, and I mean, I did my best to do what I could do for the industry, and actually, I helped a few of the people that started a new coalition in Alberta with information. I couldn't do too much because I was working for the government, so I couldn't give them much insider information, but at least I was able to say, yeah, go talk to this person or go talk to that person, right? So,
Yeah.
so they've got a new coalition about trying to keep the rivers and streams and stuff in Alberta healthy and back up to where they should be, right? So
Yeah, I
yeah,
was going to
it was
ask I was going to ask if you had any struggles with integrity during that.
I did at times. There were certain things. I got lucky because all the systems that I worked on were not really fish bearing systems. Yes, the North Saskatchewan was, but it has 27 different species of fish, and we had fish gates and stuff like that because we were just pumping water out of there. We weren't. There's no dam. We just had a intake in the river that was pumping water up into another lake for drinking water for another town. So we weren't impacting fish. And at Buffalo Lake and Gull Lake, we were actually helping fish by keeping the water level up, right? And making sure that they haven't had enough water for overwinter and, they weren't winter killing and things. Now, the last 6 years, both those pumps have been shut down because they found Prussian carp in the Red Deer River. So now we put a halt on pumping because we didn't want to pump Prussian carp into these lakes, right? So and destroy the
Right.
fisheries, right?
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, and it's um
How did they get there?
walleye. They've come all the way across North America, all the way from the east, slowly moved themselves all the way over. The Bow River's overrun with them. The Red Deer's overrun with them. Oh yeah, they're everywhere. They're going to make it to BC eventually. They will. They will be here eventually. Just they just they come all the way across from eastern United States. So and they're everywhere. They're in every system. So
What will happen to our native steelhead and salmon runs with that?
it's not good. And that's why the BC government is like. I just drove through from Alberta to here, and I tell you, their signage and their wash your boat and inspections mandatory and all that stuff is harsh, like harsh. So they're doing BC is doing everything they can to keep them out, but it's. I mean, so did Alberta and so did Montana and so did Idaho, and it's just it's taken about 40 years to get across, but they're moving across and they're nasty little buggers. They're goldfish. That's what they are.
This
Goldfish on
is
steroids.
terrifying. Just as a side note, and again, as a bit of a shameless plug for kind of something I'm up to, my other podcast, Into the Backing, is a show that I did before the whole world shut down a few years back. And it's like a roundtable discussion where we all sit down and we kind of have a not a debate, but we sit down and we have a pretty thorough discussion with all sides of a varying argument or issue. I might have to. I can't see anyone who's going to battle on behalf of the carp, but I might have to make this carp issue be part of an Into the Backing episode. Is there anyone
I would
who's for the carp?
no, not that I
No.
know of. It put it to this way: they're the problem with the carp is they're algae eaters and they're weed eaters. That's what they do. But you know as well as I do, that's the bottom of the totem pole. That's the bottom of the food chain. If they're eating all the algae and everything, there's no place for the insects and the invertebrates and stuff to grow up. And if there's none of that, there's nothing for the fish. So basically, they're starving the native fish out, is what they're doing. And the thing with carp, just like tilapia, they eat algae, they poop, the algae grows because of the poop, and they eat the algae. So it's a cycle, right?
What
So
happens
they
to the
can
oxygen in the water? Does it just start to get
there's places where you can literally walk across the Red Deer River. Like there's it's black with Prussian carp. And they've opened it up and said, any fisherman, kill them, don't keep them, don't throw them back, throw them up on shore, kill them, let the birds eat them. They've opened it up to the Asian community, wide open, eat as many as you want, and they love them, right? So and supposedly they're yummy, they're just full of bones, right? And
yeah,
they're not that big. Like a big one is going to be 12, 14 inches.
got
Um,
it.
but they're the other thing is well, I can't remember. I was part of the Prussian carp study in Alberta for the government. I did a lot of research and stuff with the government, and so I was part of the study. I just can't remember what the Latin name is for it, but basically they're called sperm stealers. So they don't have to have Prussian carp sperm to make babies. They can use trout sperm. They can use bull sperm. They can use all kinds of other fish's sperm to make to impregnate their eggs. So that's the big one. And they can have up to 10,000 eggs 4 times a year. And by the time the second time comes around, the first group is available to make babies. So
Okay, my
that's yeah.
brain is absolutely spinning. First of all, just so you know, I had caught a beautiful carp, I don't know, some years back here in Australia, and I let it go. And people were really upset about that. Now I understand why. And I'm definitely going to make this into an into the backing episode to talk about why it's super important that we actually kill the carp. Because in
But
Australia,
it's
you actually, I think
but it's
legally you're supposed to kill them.
there is a difference between, make sure you make a difference, carp and Prussian carp. Mirror carp and common carp and stuff, they're good for us. They don't they don't produce like that. And there are natural in like the Vetter channel, and there's a few places that you can get common carp. Big ones too, up to 30 pounds. I've
I
caught a
didn't
few.
know that.
Oh yeah, they're fun. In the Sumas Canal, not the Vetter Canal, the Sumas
Yeah.
Canal.
Oh, yeah.
But there's a few places in BC you can get carp, and they're not bad for it. It's the Prussian carp. It's the same ones we've got in Dragon Lake. Dragon Lake has Prussian carp, has goldfish, Prussian carp, right? So
Is that what they are?
yeah, they're
Okay.
overgrown goldfish is what they are.
I've got
Yeah.
so much to look up. I'm absolutely going to do this. And you know what else?
If
Thank
you
you.
need any
Because you know what you
information, let
just
me know.
I will. And you know what else you just did? You just confirmed I'm going to now from now on forth with you as whatever episode this is, 200 and something. From now on, every episode, I'm going to ask my guest, what is something that we could have an into the backing episode about? I'm not saying that yours has to be carp, but from now on, I'm going to ask everybody. I will be asking you at the end. So have a think about what you think is a roundtable forum that is contentious that we can hash out and perhaps come up with a solution at the end.
Perfect. Love it.
Okay,
Great idea.
back
Great idea.
back to you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that idea. Your career. So then what happens after this tenure? You just retired from the government.
I was with the government for just under 10 years. And there was a lot of turnover. There was a lot of guys there for 40 years, 45 years. So they were starting to retire and stuff. So I moved up from what I called a Tech 5 to a Tech 6, and then a Tech 7, which is a team lead. And so, um, but then my Tech 6, who had been there for 35 years, just never, ever took holidays, ever, ever. I mean, he had 9 months of holidays banked. So when he was ready to retire, it would have been a mess. But what? So he decided he was going to go visit his brother down in Medicine Hat, and he never woke up. And that made my mind up. I'm retiring. I'm done with this. I need to enjoy my life. I'm too young. I don't want to die on the job. My dad died fairly young. My mom died 2 years younger than I am now. My mom died at 52. I'm like, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this. My wife and I, luckily I made enough money the last 10 years so my wife could build her online business. And now her online business is supporting us to do what we're doing now. So
Oh,
we make enough money to be able to, like, we just got back from 7 months in Mexico because her business is allowing us to work from wherever we have internet, right? So that we just decided the hell with this crap. If I only have 10 years left, I'm going to make fun and make as much fun as I can with it, right? If I have 20 years, well, I'm going to get 20 years of fun, whatever, right? So that was the next career change. Now I'm still doing. I've got like I think 500 as of today 529 YouTube videos up for fly tying. I do 2 a week up on my YouTube channel. I put up TikToks 3 times a week. I do Instagram 2 to 3 times a week. I do Facebook posts all the time. So I'm making a couple of bucks, and literally a couple of bucks on Facebook and on YouTube. Um, but it's more for fun. I just love doing it, and I'm pro staff with 5 different companies right now. So that's part of it, making sure that I get discounts or stuff on materials, and I'm making sure that I'm just helping them and supporting them and getting their name out. And yeah, so that's my life right now, just
and you
enjoying and
guys live
fishing.
pretty simply, right? You're doing the whole what did you call
We
it the other day? Nomad? What did you say?
we're digital nomads. So my wife
Digital
does,
nomads,
like I
yeah.
said, I'm actually her business does website maintenance and security. So that's what she does. She takes businesses, small and usually small businesses from around the world. I think all but one are women. And they have small businesses, and my wife makes sure that their websites are secure, that their updates are updated all the time. And she also does courses. She does WordPress courses and SEO courses and other stuff like that. So she
What's her
develops
company
those.
called?
It's Get a Geek in Your Pocket.
Oh, there you go. Hire, get a geek in your pocket.
So and she's the chief geek and I'm the geek in training.
Do you know that a geek,
So
I think technically by the dictionary, is somebody who bites off or cuts off chickens' heads in a circus?
I don't need to know that.
Yeah. Okay.
It
Get
was
a geek,
it
not
sounded
that geek in your pocket.
it sounded better than your dork in training,
Why, which one?
right? It sounded like get a geek
Oh
sounded
yeah,
better than
get
get a
a
dork.
dork in your pocket. Oh, that's a horrible idea. Don't, yeah, note to the marketing team, do not go that route. The
So
book,
so
the second
that's
book.
what she
When
does,
did,
and that's what we were able to like I said, able to do, right? So yeah,
yeah,
the book,
book number 2.
The Freshman Fly Fisher's Insect Guide, and it's based on it's a still waters insect guide. So it's
Uh-huh.
all the still waters. I'm actually in the middle of writing part 2, which is going to be flowing waters, moving waters, insects, so rivers. Um, but yeah, that like I said, that one's a Canadian bestseller. I actually ran out of the books quite a while ago, and then I just happened to find that I had another box. I think I got like 30 of that. It's like,
Wait, but this
but
is a self-published book as well?
both of them, yeah, I self-published both. I paid, I think, 52,000 for the first one, and this one was over 60 because it was full color, and not only full color. They're hidden in my fly tying kit, otherwise I'd show you. But the second one is a pocket guide. It's only this small. Do you know Jim Scholmeyer?
No, I don't think
Out
so.
of Washington State, he wrote two books. One a Hatch Guide for Lakes, Hatch Guide for Rivers, and that's what I based it on. But
Right.
all my paper is water resistant, so you can take and put it in your pocket and have it out on the lake, and if it gets wet, it won't do that puff up thing, right? So
Sounds
people
expensive.
take
How
it
many
out.
pages is it?
It's over 100, I think.
How do you get a self-published book like that on the Canada's best-selling list?
Just sell. I just
Volume.
yeah, oh yeah, you have to. It's a minimum of 2,000 sold. It's a small number here in Canada, 2,000. Down in the States, I think it's 20,000 to get on the bestseller list. But here, I mean, we have 10, what tenth of the population, right? So yeah, it's only 2,000 needed. I ordered 2,500 of my book, and like I said, I just found 30 that I forgot about. But other than that, I've been out for 5 years. I haven't had a book in 5 years, and it just happened to like, oh, yeah, I forgot about those ones, right?
Are you
So
going to do a reprint?
yeah, I actually right now my freshman fly fisher generate a new generation beginner's guide is up on Amazon. And I'm going to be doing the same with this one. I'm going to have it as an ebook, and then I'm going to do a reprint eventually. I just did a second edition, so I went through it and updated things. I mean, I was still a relatively new writer at the time, so there was some mistakes in there, and there was just a few things about try this website and try that website, and here's a link, and well, they're dead now, so those links. So there's an updated version that is going to be coming out on Amazon and a reprint as well. Yeah, I'll probably do print on demand just because I can't afford to put out $60,000 to have books printed, and because of our nomadic lifestyle, where do I put them? I'm not taking them with
No, that sounds like a nightmare.
me.
Talk to me about this nomadic lifestyle. You guys just got back from a pretty amazing trip where you drove all the way from Canada to Mexico and back, obviously. Can we talk about this?
Sure. Yeah, we started in Camrose, Alberta, which is just outside of Edmonton. We started there in early January, and we took off, came down here to White Rock to visit the mother-in-law for a few weeks, just to say bye for a while. And then we headed down the west coast, took the west coast all the way through the Oregon, down to the Redwood Forest, stayed in San Francisco for a week, and then all the way into Vegas, went to stay with a friend there for a day, and then into Sedona, and stayed we stayed in an Airstream like, not an Airstream, but an Airstream like trailer in the middle of the desert in Sedona. So cool. Got to hear the coyotes at night, and just the desert, and it was gorgeous. It was stunning. Yeah, and then we crossed the border and went to San Carlos, Mexico for a week, which is on the oh my God, I'm having a brain for it. Sea of Cortez. So Baja, California, that goes out.
What were you driving though? Did you mention, or are you in an RV at this time?
We're in a Ford Escape.
Okay.
Everything we owned is in our Ford Escape. We sold everything, or we were renting a house in Camrose. I left, my son took over the rent, and I left everything with him: beds, couches, dishes. It's his. That's his. I told him, that's your inheritance. I'm spending the rest. So, um, so yeah, so that's, we just, whatever fit in our. I had my suitcase, my wife's suitcase, my backpack, her backpack, and then a couple of containers with medication and a few other things, and then two big um, Home Depot black with the yellow lid, two big things like that with all my fly tying materials, so I could continue doing my videos. I've got that down to a big, huge suitcase now. That's all that I have. All materials are all vacuum sealed into bags in my suitcase. So, but yeah. So after that, we headed down to Puerto Vallarta for a month, and we lived away from all the craziness of the tourists. We lived way back in the hillside with the Mexicans. We actually lived in a house with a Mexican lady that made us dinner a few times, and I made her dinner, and did a lot of fishing on the beaches there, and caught us some nice fish. I got some lane snapper or red snapper off the beach. I caught a couple of 25 to 30 pound Jack Crevalles. And yeah, just and brought them home to her, and she was like ecstatic because it's a lot of money for. I mean, they were just an average couple household, right? So, so we're staying in Airbnbs, and then after that, we went to Manzanillo for a month and did the same thing. Just fished my guts out, and then Mexico City for a week. That was crazy. That's got almost the population of Canada in one city, so that was kind of nuts.
But isn't it so
Um,
dangerous? I mean, all I'm thinking is danger, 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 danger.
I'll finish with what we did, and then I'll explain that stuff. So after
Yeah.
that, we took off. After a week of that, we went up to a place called San Cristobal de las Casas, which is in Chiapas State, which is only 80 kilometers from Guatemala, way up in the mountains, way up, 7,000 feet in the middle of the jungle. So no fishing, none, zero, not even rivers, nothing. It's an old Mayan and Aztec community. That thing was built in 1520. That city. Um, Lots of tourists around, just different tourists. A lot of digital nomads, a lot of hippies, a lot of that kind of stuff. Not the typical all you can eat buffets and that kind of. It was not. There is no all exclusive resorts. None. Zero. Zilch. So after that, we took off and we went up into the States. I went to Corpus Christi. I went on 2 guided fishing trips in Corpus Christi, and then up to Austin, then to Dallas, then to Oklahoma City, Kansas City, and then up to Winnipeg, and then back over to here. So 17,000, just under 17,000 kilometers. So
It's
yeah,
so cool. And I'm envious because this is something I've always wanted to do, especially the Mexico thing. But maybe I'm watching too many movies. All I'm
not
thinking is
dangerous.
cartel and like trafficking and all these horrible things. None of that?
Don't be stupid. That's all I can say. Mexicans don't go out at night. Don't go out at night. They don't drive at night. You don't drive at night. Period. That's the biggest part. Just don't be dumb. Use common sense. A lot of the tourists that go down there, I don't want to say that it's only Americans because it's not, but period. Tourists that go down there think that they're all that in a bag of chips and you should do what I tell you to do because I'm giving you money. It's their country. Use your brain. It's their country. I'm not going to go to Australia or to New Zealand or to Kenya and act like a Canadian there. It's not my area. That's their land. So you just got to use your brain. Don't travel at night. Yes, sir. No, sir. We were stopped many times on the highway. One time we got stopped by police. No problem. They asked us questions. They looked through my all our stuff. They took a look at my fly tying materials and asked questions. And I showed them my videos. And okay, and they're all good and no problems. They did make sure they were like, because their English was broken. No, watch while we search. Watch to make sure we're not doing anything wrong. Watch, right?
Oh,
So
yeah.
that was good. They did ask for some money. It's just the police down there. It's the way they are. They're underpaid, so they did ask for American money, but they didn't want pesos. They wanted American money. So, but that was
And
okay.
do you
It
do
was.
it?
I told them I didn't have any.
No?
It was fine. No, they let us go.
Okay.
That was no problem. Second stop, not so much. The second stop in Sinaloa State, which is where the cartel are, was there's a group of federales, let's call them FBI, Mexican FBI. They're not, but that are known to be dirty. And they pulled us over in a check stop, and they took my wife over there and me over there, and had a female
Oh,
search her and a male search me, and grilled us. Do you have any money? Do you have any Canadian money? Do you have any American money? We need some money. We need some money, right? And we just kept telling them we don't have any. We don't have any. We don't have any. It felt a little weird because they were unmarked cars. They all were wearing balaclavas, so you could only see their eyes, and so it
oh my
felt a
God. I feel like I'm going to throw up. Sorry.
but but it was right on a highway, and there was 1,000 cars driving by us. So they weren't going to do anything stupid. Again, if that would have been at night, we would have been in deep trouble. We probably would have been kidnapped, or our cars taken, that kind of stuff. But just don't travel at night. Just don't be dumb. You travel between sunup and sundown. Don't be out. Other Mexicans don't. Why would you? Right?
I actually didn't know
So
that Mexicans didn't travel at night.
they don't. They don't. Do not travel on the highways and stuff. They do not. Town, sure, you can be out till 2 o'clock in the morning in Puerto Vallarta. Just don't go out on the highway. Right? They don't. Why would you?
Any
So and
other kind of safety tips that you can think of off the top of your head?
just be smart. Really,
Okay.
just be smart. Pay attention to the road. There's a ton of like these highways. Stay on big one. Stay on toll roads. Don't take non-toll roads. The toll roads are covered by a group called the Green Angels, and they're basically a group of people that will travel the highways and have phones on them. That if you have a flat tire, they'll come and fix it. If you have engine problems, they'll come and help you. If you're having any sort of problems with cartel or whatever, they'll come out and help. So, which is very, like I said, it's extremely rare. The media blows the whole cartel and corrupt cop thing out of the water. There's absolutely there is. Cancun, you get to the airport, you rent a car. As soon as you're off the airport in a rental car, the cops pull you over and want money because they see the rental car. It, and it's just part of it. Make sure you got 1,000 pesos on it. You had to give it to them, and they'll leave you alone, right? But yeah, stay on the toll roads. That's a big one. Stay on the toll roads. They're better roads. They're actually better roads than here in Canada. They're excellent.
Right.
The only thing, make sure that every time you get to a small town, you slow down, because in every small town, there's what they call topes, which are speed bumps. And you're doing 120 kilometers an hour, and you get to this town, and there's speed bumps, and they're like this, right? They're
Oh
they're,
no.
they're suspension wreckers. But at every town, when you slow down at the speed bumps, there's people selling burritos and quesadillas, and they're trying. And we just pigged out on those on the road food.
All
So
right.
yeah.
How was fishing? What was your favorite part of it from a fishing stance?
I wish that the time of year I went, there was a lot of surf, so I didn't get to do a lot as much fly fishing as I wanted. So I was chucking spoons and stuff, which whatever, I'm fishing, I don't care. I prefer to fly fish, but it was excellent. It was I don't know. I couldn't tell you how many species of fish I caught, from, like I said, barred paro to jack crevalle to puffer fish to snapper to barred paro to greenback jacks to all these. Right, it's so much fun. So powerful. I mean, you live in Australia, you would know. Saltwater fish are so much more powerful. It just, I don't know. Even a 14-inch greenback jack fights like a 4-pound trout, right? They're just crazy. So, and on a 6-weight fly rod, that's a hoot, right?
It's a game
Um,
changer.
yeah, it's
So,
fun. It is. Smart again. It can be dangerous. I got thrown around in the surf a few times. I lost my tilly hat, my sunglasses, because I got tumbled over because I wasn't paying attention. And you just got to use your brain. But my plan was to go back down in October and spend 2 months, 3 months actually in Baja, go after roosters from the shore.
yes.
Yeah, but things might be changing. We might be staying here for a few months, so I don't know if that's going to happen. We'll see. We'll see. But that's the nice thing of doing what we're doing. We can stay here, go there, go there, go there. Whatever, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
Wherever,
you're free.
my head lays, right?
Absolutely. So what's next for you now? Now, because you just recently got back, right? How many days ago did you get back, or weeks
We
ago?
got back actually about 4 weeks ago. We would have been here a lot earlier, but we ended up trading our car in and got a brand new car. And because of that, we had to wait for finances to clear. And so we were in Alberta for longer than we wanted to be, but it's all good. And then I spent 5 days in Logan Lake with a buddy of mine that lives there. And we just got here day before yesterday in White Rock. We're going to be here until mid-September. We're taking my mother-in-law over to Vancouver Island, where she spent most of her life, and she hadn't been there back for 20 years, and she's in her mid-80s now, so she wants to see it one last time. So we're going to take her over there, and then Sunshine Coast, and come back Horseshoe Bay, and then for planned stays like it is, we're going to do a week in the Seattle area, a week in the Portland area, a week in San Francisco. We got tickets to an NFL game in Los Angeles to our favorite team. So our team is actually coming in. They're visitors to the Chargers. So we're gonna go and watch that game. We got tickets for that, and then into Baja. So that's the way we go. We might be staying. Actually, we applied. We went and looked at an apartment in Logan Lake that's for rent and fully furnished, and we might stay there for 6 to 7 months, just to get our businesses up to. It was a learning experience. The whole business, doing business on the road, was a learning experience. And now we realize, okay, we got to get this settled. We got to get this settled. We got to get this settled, and it'll make our road trips easier. So we're kind of thinking about staying up in the Pacific Northwest for, up to like May or something like that. Just getting things caught up, getting my YouTube channel built up a little bit better, rebranding a bit, letting me finish my next book, and that kind of stuff, right? So we're still kind of juggling which way we're going to go. I want to go back to Mexico, but I also want to stay here, and do the fall trout fishery and the spring trout fishery again. But I don't know. We'll see.
And there's something really beautiful about just enjoying the dark and the chill of winter in Canada. As somebody who chases summer year round, I never have time to just be. Do you know what I mean? And it's funny, I was in Florida recently at ICAST, and somebody came up to me and they're like, "Oh, the resurgence of April Vokey." And it's like, listen, I haven't gone anywhere. I'm just too busy to post it because there is no downtime. And I've actually found that I really miss just the psh.
I tell you, 2 months in San Cristobal, there's nothing to do there. There's no fishing. There's no nothing. There's go and enjoy the culture, because there's a ton of little communities all around the valley. It's like I said, it's at 7,000 feet. And then up the hills, up the mountains, there's all these little Aztec and Mayan communities that you got to go and visit. But other than that, we had this beautiful, stunning Airbnb with this beautiful back deck overlooking the rainforest. And every morning you'd get up and just go and have your coffee and listen to the birds and the monkeys it was heaven for 2 months. Just there was no stress. There was no need to be anywhere. It was just right.
What's the
Yeah.
average cost for an Airbnb like that in Mexico?
Airbnbs are definitely not the cheapest. I think we're looking at between 1,000 and 1,200 a month, but that's with everything, your internet, your everything, right, is included.
Canadian, not US.
That's Canadian. And if you're willing to stay in it, like as an example, in San Cristobal, I think we paid 1,400. But if I was willing to stay in that area for 6 months, that went down to 900. Right. If you rent a place, a fully furnished place off of somebody, not an Airbnb, outside of Airbnb, 600 a month. Right. So
Yeah.
if you're willing to stay for a while, it's dirt cheap. The big one is food. I mean, we ate. There was one place that we went to, and they had the best tacos around, and you got 5 tacos for 40 pesos. So that's 5 tacos for about 250 Canadian. $2.50, and we were stuffed. 5 tacos between two of us. We're like, oh
yeah, you're done.
Right. So actually, our last day in San Cristobal, we went to the tourist area, which is always more expensive. I went and got this huge meat platter with, like, you name it. It had pulled pork and barbecued beef and sausage and chicken and all this stuff on it. And then when we came to Canada and we're in Regina, driving through Regina, we stopped at an A&W, and it was more expensive than that meal.
Oh, I believe that.
It was crazy. It's so I love my country. I'm a Canadian through and through, and love the crap out of my country. But man, it's hard to live here. It's expensive. Oh, yeah, it's getting crazy here, and it's even crazier than the States. We drove through Texas and Oklahoma and Kansas, Missouri, Iowa, Dakotas, and it was so much cheaper down there to eat and fuel and all that stuff. So it's hard to kind of hard to swallow because I mean I'm a Canadian. I love my country. I'm proud of this country. I'm proud and how beautiful this country is. But it's kind of hard to swallow when you're on a. I mean, when you're on a fixed budget. So for all your viewers and yourself, for us as a couple, living well, not going nuts, but not starving ourselves, but $3,000 to $3,200 a Canadian a month. You're living quite well.
I think that's for Americans. I think that's like 1,800 American or something in and around there.
That's true. Yeah, about $1,800, and that's using Airbnb. If you're going to stay for 6 months, you're now down from 3,000 down to almost 2,000, right? Because you can cut out a lot of money if you
Yeah.
stay somewhere.
My final question to you is, if you could choose, this is going to come across rusty because I've never asked this out loud. If you could choose a subject to have a roundtable forum where 3 or 4 of us sat down to discuss it, what would it be?
We talked about the Prussian carp thing. I think that's important, but I honestly, for me, that more important is how do we bring the young into this? How do we get them to continue on what decades of people have built? How do we get them to get on to competitive fly fishing? And I mean, it just everything, just this whole. How do we bring the young in and get them to continue this when we're gone, right? Because I think a lot of them there's too much of this crap, right? And there's not enough out there, right? So for
define
me, that's a
young,
big
Rick, out of curiosity, because we do not have another 2 hours. Otherwise, I've got an entire huge conversation that I'd like to have about around this, which is probably why we're going to be doing this other podcast. But define young in your mind so I have a better understanding.
Honestly, I've caught fly fishing for many years. The ones that I found absorbed it the best were that 10 to 16, 10 to 15. They were unbelievable, especially that 10 to 12. They just absorbed. Their brains are still moldable enough. Once you start hitting that 16, puberty takes over and you're just dumb. I mean,
Yeah.
we all were, every
Yeah.
one of us. Right. And then again, back into the 20s, there's I don't want to badmouth anybody, but there's a group of the elite. Then I don't think that's a place. There's no place for that in any industry, in any sport. That elite. Oh, I only dry fly, right? Like whatever. Whatever. Go dry fly. Then we need to keep this active. We need the young to come on. It's good for our industry. It's good for keeping the fish stocks alive. We need more people like Brian Chan to go into those industries and keep our stocks alive. We need, as much as some people argue about the competitive fly fishing in the UK and everywhere else throughout the world, we need that. It makes us better fishermen. And it's Todd Oshie and guys like that have really brought that to us, and it's building and building and building, and it's getting better. But it educates us for the fishery, not just for the competition, but for the fishery and how to keep it healthy and stuff. I am on more British forums and European German forums and stuff like that, and Italy and France and Slovenia on their tying forums and on their fishing forums, learning their styles than I am on North America by a long shot.
I can see that.
They've been doing it for 200 years. I mean, there's patterns out there.
Technical. They're so technical.
And on top of that, I mean, if you ever seen a competition in Great Britain, they have a huge parade and thousands of people show up. Here we just had the Worlds and the Masters in Kamloops, and I don't think there was 4 people on the street.
Yeah.
Right? So there's a big difference. And like, I'm not being a huge proponent for competition. For me, learning and teaching, that's the huge thing. We need to pass on our knowledge. You do, I do, Brian does, Phil does, everybody, right? We need to pass on that knowledge to the younger generation so they keep it alive for their kids and they keep it alive for their kids, right? So for me, that's the big one, in my opinion. So
this is great. I'm so excited. That I've just added to my list. It's in the list. It will get done. It has been such an absolute pleasure to sit down with you. Thank you. And I hope to see you sooner than 2009. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, it is. But next time you're here, and if I'm here, we should fish together.
We should.
And if you happen to be in Mexico, I'll take you out. So
you've got yourself a deal.